We may try and get back to it again over the course of the programme, but for now we're going to move on to postcodes. You may not know it, but in the next few weeks, unique postcodes are going to start dropping through our letterboxes. The system has been promised for years and it was supposed to bring many benefits. But critics say that the postcodes being introduced here will not do what they were supposed to do. So will they be worth their €27 million price tag? Mark Coughlin has this report.
There's something going on behind these walls. Something is being built.
Every house, every apartment and apartment block and every business premises will get a code.
A special project, building something most other countries have had for decades. The taxpayer is to shell out tens of millions for their creation.
I think Eircode is a very good system for Ireland. It'll be fast to deploy and very low cost to deploy.
But serious questions are being asked by representatives of major companies about our new postcode system.
The taxpayer is spending very large amounts of money that's not going to deliver any benefit.
Soon a little letter will be arriving at your door. Your new postcode. It follows years of discussion about a postcode system.
Definitely reduces costs, it improves competitiveness and is of enormous benefit to services like fire, hospital, ambulance services and so on.
A postcode system could also help tackle an almost solely Irish issue. Two families, same surname, two houses, opposite sides of a rural crossroad, no house numbers. You see where the problems start with accurate delivery. These are referred to as non-unique addresses. 35% of addresses in Ireland are non-unique. Here's how it will look. The first three characters, they'll point to a general geographic area of the country. There'll be 139 of these areas nationwide. The second part of the code, that'll be assigned non-sequentially. This means that your neighbour's code will be completely unrelated to yours. It's this second part of the code that critics of the Eircode design find a little bit bemusing. But Eircode say having two addresses with a code that's nearly the same could in itself cause problems. Could you understand that people might be a bit surprised that their neighbour will have a completely different code to them?
The first three characters will be the same, generally, because they'll be in the same area. I can understand why people think it might be strange, but if, for instance, in emergency services, if you call for an ambulance, the code is a verification of the address. So the emergency services will ask you for the two pieces of information, your address and your code. The emergency services can then verify that code is that address. If it's given wrong, then there's something wrong.
Historically, two organisations have been against postcodes. Of 55 organisations surveyed in 2005, all were in favour of postcodes being introduced, bar An Post and the Communications Workers Union.
An Post were the only people telling us that we didn't need a postcode system for the last 10 or 20 years, and that was really a protectionist stand. I think now that the Eircode is being introduced, I think An Post will use it, but I think they've just not been very vocal about saying, yeah, this is a good idea and now we're going to use it, because it's a bit of a U-turn in terms of their policy and their public stance over the last 20 years or so.
An Post now say they fully support the Eircode system, but given their highly impressive next-day delivery speeds now, it seems any benefits to them won't be major.
We're running at exceptionally high levels of performance, so we don't see the code in itself lifting us beyond 98%.
It's perhaps unsurprising that An Post supports the Eircode. According to the Eircode design document, they've been extensively consulted about it. This is the design report on which the final code was largely based. In it, there are about 100 references to An Post. At the back is a list of the organisations who participated in workshops to review the proposed design. All are public service organisations in one form or another.
Initially, when we saw a postcode coming out, we were delighted. But when we looked into the fine detail of it, we realised that somehow we had ended up with a postcode that looks as if it was defined by An Post to be slightly useful for them and completely useless for everyone else.
The Department of Communications today said they consulted widely with public and private service providers, including the logistics industry, before going to tender. This finalisation of the design took place after the wide consultation, which helped determine the requirements set out in the tender. They said, "We're confident that the introduction of postcodes will be welcomed by the Irish public when they receive their Eircodes over the summer." There's been mixed reaction from the private sector delivery operators to the details of the system. Nightline Group, one of the country's biggest domestic delivery companies, is in favour.
At the end of the day, we need a postcode system that our national postal operator and the universal service provider can work with. If we introduced a postcode system that was difficult for them to implement or use or adapt their systems to use it, then we'd have a lot of problems.
The Freight Transport Association of Ireland represent a number of big international delivery companies here. They say it will be, quote, completely useless to their members. A big issue for them is the non-sequential nature of the code. It's a structure different to any other code used worldwide. They say it will do nothing to make it easier to plan deliveries.
It will make it easier to track people for billing purposes. It will make it easier to track people for taxation and revenue purposes, but it won't make it any easier for that same person to get a parcel delivery. So I don't see any upside for the citizen or the consumer through this postcode, just downside.
I think 139 high-level postcode sectoral areas in Ireland gives us enough granularity. It's better than what we have at the moment, because here in our hub we can only sort 26 ways or 32 ways at the moment based on county. So it is a good system, and I think now it's about implementation.
So what do the emergency services have to say on the matter? A spokesperson for Dublin Fire Brigade said they expect Eircodes to be of some use. An Garda Síochána said because Eircodes will provide exact location details, they will prove extremely useful over time in dispatching resources to incidents. The National Ambulance Service said they support the project and told us anything that can assist us in assisting people, we welcome. Are there any plans to set up signs to indicate what postcode areas people are entering as they travel or anything like that?
Not at this point in time, no, there isn't.
So are people likely to know what postcode they're nearest to if they have to call the emergency services?
There are very clever apps out there if you have an emergency outside of an address, and that's what they're used for. A postcode system isn't designed to locate you outside of an address.
That was talked about as one of the benefits this emergency services benefit. So if you're calling the emergency service and you're not at home, is there any use for a postcode?
If you're in a premises, either a business premises or an address, then it is a benefit. You know, a side benefit may have been in other locations, but as I say, there are apps for that. That's not what a postcode system is designed for.
There are other types of systems which are linked more directly to geographic locations over delivery locations. Loc8 is one example.
If you take a campus like UCD, hundreds of buildings in University College Dublin, Belfield, only one of those buildings will have an Eircode because only one of those buildings receives the mail from a post. If we have a proper postcode, every building would have a code.
The wording used in the tender process prevented companies from pooling resources to match a €40 million turnover requirement. That's what the European Commission said following complaints by Loc8. This meant they couldn't bid. The department called this a language issue. The EC says measures should be taken to ensure such issues don't reoccur.
What do you say to people who feel that you're somebody who's just kicking up now because you haven't won the contract?
We may be disgruntled, but we feel we have justification because the EC has confirmed what we see as a denial of rights, but we weren't an underbidder because we never got considered.
The problem with implementing additional features, according to Eircode, is that it would impact the effectiveness of their code.
What we're designing is a postcode system. You know, there are ancillary things you can do with other types of systems, but they would diminish the functionality, the core functionality.
But others believe functions like sending links to maps are becoming a daily part of modern living and should have been included in the design.
If we end up in a scenario that we have Loc8 and 3, 4 or 5 other coding systems out there, the public is just going to be confused. They're just going to consign all of this to the bin and go back to what they do now. A whole generation of looking at a postcode will have been wasted.
Eircode is due to be launched early next month. Its estimated cost is €27 million. Clearly, you haven't heard the last of it yet.
Mark Coughlin reporting there. Now, returning to matters financial, the saga of the Greek bailout is continuing with potentially serious consequences right across the Eurozone. Ian Geider and Dan O'Brien are still with me. Dan, what's the latest on Greece is basically kicking the can down the road for another